I didn't fight back. I didn't cry. I just picked up my phone, opened the Notes app, and started a list. That's how I handle things now. After my husband passed 3 years ago, pancreatic cancer, 41 days from diagnosis to gone, I stopped reacting and started documenting. It was the only way I kept my head above water while raising 2 kids alone in a house that still smelled like him. My daughter Penny was 7 when her dad died. My son Rowan was 4. They don't talk about him the way I do. Penny keeps a photo of him on her nightstand. Rowan asks me sometimes what his voice sounded like, and I never quite know what to say. We lived on the life insurance for the first year, enough that I didn't have to make panic decisions. Enough that I could grieve without the lights getting cut off. My financial advisor, a quiet, practical woman named Miss Fournier, told me to split it. Emergency fund, respir for the kids, and a separate account I wouldn't touch unless something changed dramatically. I listened to her. I always listen to people who know more than me. My younger brother, though, he never listened to anyone. Devin is 30. I'm 33. Our parents divorced when I was 12 and he was 9, and I think the separation wrecked him in ways neither of us fully understood until we were adults. He latched onto anyone who made him feel chosen. Girlfriends, friends, anyone who said you're special with enough conviction. He was loyal to a fault, which sounds like a compliment, except in Devin's case it meant he had no filter for who he was being loyal to. He met Krista at a gym in Mississauga. She was 28, worked in event planning, and had opinions about everything: the right neighborhood, the right car, the right kind of wedding. Devin called me 2 months in, absolutely lit up about her. I was happy for him. Genuinely. He'd been adrift since a bad breakup in 2022, and I thought, okay, maybe this is it. Maybe she's the one who steadies him. She wasn't. But I didn't know that yet. The engagement happened fast, 8 months after they started dating. Devin called me first, before he even told our mother. He was breathless, excited, the way he used to get as a kid on Christmas morning. I told him I was thrilled. I meant it. Then came the wedding conversation. It started small. He mentioned they were looking at venues in the Niagara wine region, which, fine, beautiful area, not cheap, but not insane. Then Krista wanted a minimum of 150 guests. Then, she wanted a specific caterer she'd worked with through her events job. Then the florist. Then the photographer who'd done a wedding she'd pinned on her Pinterest board for 3 years. The number landed on my kitchen table like a dropped plate. $92,000. Devin didn't ask me directly at first. He circled it for 2 weeks, mentioning how hard it was to save while also paying rent in the GTA, how Krista's parents were contributing what they could. I later found out that was $4,000 and a set of dishes. How he wished things were different. Then he sat me down over dinner at my house and asked. He said he knew it was a lot. He said he'd pay me back. He said, and this is the part I keep coming back to, you're the only person in my life who I trust to help me do this right. I should have said no. I want to be honest about that. I should have said, Devin, I have 2 kids. I have a mortgage in Oakville. I have a future to protect. But I looked at him across my kitchen table and I saw the 9-year-old whose world fell apart when our parents stopped pretending to be happy, and I said yes, not the full 92. I told him I could do 60. He looked relieved enough that I almost felt relieved too. We drew up an agreement, my idea, not his. A simple document saying I was funding $60,000 toward the wedding to be repaid over 5 years. Devin signed it without reading it carefully, which should have told me something. The months leading up to the wedding were a slow unraveling that I kept choosing not to see. Krista was pleasant to my face and cold in the minutes between. The kind of cold where she'd look at her phone when I was talking, or redirect a conversation I was having with Devin so the subject became her. Small things. The kind of things that make you feel like you're imagining it. Penny and Rowan adored their uncle. Devin was good with them. Silly and patient and full of voices for the characters in Rowan's bedtime books. Whenever he came over, they lit up. I thought, this is fine. Even if Krista is difficult, Devin loves my kids. That has to count for something. The wedding was scheduled for a Saturday in late September at a vineyard property about 90 minutes outside Toronto. The ceremony at 4, dinner at 6:30. dancing until midnight. I'd attended 3 site visits. I'd been in the group chat with the caterer. I was on the vendor list as the primary financial contact because my name was on the credit card that had fronted the deposits. I had a contract with the venue. My name, my signature, my liability. I want to be very clear about that because it matters. The morning of the wedding, I got Penny and Rowan dressed early. Penny wore a green dress she'd picked out herself. Emerald, very serious about it. Rowan wore his clip-on tie and kept adjusting it in the hallway mirror. I took a photo of them. I texted it to Devin. We're on our way. So proud of you. He read it. He didn't respond. I drove 90 minutes with my kids in the back seat, Rowan falling asleep against his booster seat before we even hit the highway. We arrived at the vineyard at 3:15. The property was stunning. Rolling hills, cedar posts wrapped in white roses, a string quartet doing a sound check near the entrance. I pulled up to the guest parking area and got the kids out, took Rowan's hand, walked toward the main entrance. There was a man standing at the gate with a clipboard, security by the look of him, black jacket, earpiece, clipboard held flat against his chest. He asked my name. I told him. He checked the clipboard. He flipped to a second page. Then he looked up at me with an expression I couldn't immediately read. I'm going to need you to wait here, he said. I thought there was a mistake. I said, I'm the groom's sister. I'm also listed as the financial contact for this event. He nodded like I'd said something unremarkable. Then he turned the clipboard toward me. There was a printed sheet. On it were photographs, small, passport-sized, of my children, Penny and Rowan, photos that must have come from Devin's phone, from family gatherings, from Christmases and birthday parties, and beneath each photo in black ink, the words, not on approved guest list, not on approved guest list, not on approved guest list. My daughter, my son, with their photos printed and clipped to a security sheet like they were threats to be managed. I stared at that page for what felt like a long time. The string quartet started playing. The smell of cut roses was very strong. There must be some mistake, I said, very quietly. I was given this list this morning, the man said. He wasn't unkind about it. He looked uncomfortable. I'm just doing my job. I called Devin. It went to voicemail. I called him again. Voicemail. I texted Devin. There's a security guard at the gate. He has printed photos of Penny and Rowan, and they are not on the approved guest list. Call me immediately. Penny was holding my hand. She asked, Mom, what's happening? I told her we just had to wait a minute. Rowan had woken up on the drive and was now crouching down to look at a beetle on the gravel path, completely unbothered by the entire situation. I was grateful for that. I kept my face very still for them. Then my phone rang. Not Devin. Krista. She didn't open with hello. She said, we talked about this. We've never talked about this, I said. Devin talked to you about keeping the guest list focused. It's an intimate event. It's 150 people, Krista. Intimate for us, she said. Your kids aren't part of our circle. I didn't want to deal with children running around during the ceremony. It's a liability issue. I stood there in the gravel driveway of a vineyard that I had written checks to fund. I looked at the guard with my children's photos on his clipboard. I looked at Penny standing next to me in her emerald dress. Put Devin on the phone, I said. He's getting ready. Put Devin on the phone. There was a pause. Then Devin's voice, already apologetic in that way that means he knew this was coming and did nothing to stop it. Hey, he said. My kids have printed photos on a security exclusion list, I said. At a wedding I paid $60,000 for. Explain that to me. He said it wasn't his idea. He said Krista just wanted the day to go smoothly. He said he was sorry, but it was too late to change the list now, and maybe I could find a sitter from the parking lot, and I actually laughed, out loud, because the alternative was something I didn't want my children to see. Okay, I said. I'm going to need you to listen to me very carefully. He started to speak. I kept going. I am the financial contact on the venue contract. My name is on the catering agreement. My name is on the florist invoice. My name is on the bar service authorization. If I withdraw consent, this event cannot legally proceed as contracted. Silence. I gave you $60,000 because I love you, I said, but I am not a bank. I am your sister, and my children just had their photos printed on a security list like they are problems to be contained. Devin said, you wouldn't. I said, I'm already calling. I hung up. I picked up Rowan and took Penny's hand and walked back to my car. The first call was to the venue manager, a composed woman named Ms. Belair who I'd spoken to a dozen times over the past 8 months. I told her I was withdrawing authorization as the primary financial contact effective immediately, and that I was invoking the clause in our contract that allowed for cancellation with partial refund if the event had not yet begun. She was quiet for a moment. She said, the ceremony is scheduled to start in 40 minutes. I'm aware, I said. Another pause. Then, I'll need to confirm this with the property manager. Can you hold? I held. My kids sat in the back seat. Penny had her headphones on, listening to something. Rowan had fallen back asleep. Miss Belair came back. She said the property manager had confirmed that as the named financial contact and contract signatory, I did have authorization to cancel. The deposit structure meant I'd lose a portion. She walked me through the numbers. But the remaining balance, roughly $38,000, could be returned to my card within 10 business days. I said that was acceptable. I said, please proceed with shutting down the event setup. She said, very professionally, we'll begin immediately. I watched from the parking lot. Not all of it. I didn't stay to watch. That felt wrong. It felt like gloating, and that's not who I want to be. But I saw the moment the string quartet stopped mid-song. I saw the vineyard staff moving quickly between the tables. I saw the lights on the ceremony arch go dark. My phone started ringing. Devin. Krista. My mother. Krista again? Devin 4 more times. My Aunt Patricia, which meant someone had called her, which meant the whole family already knew. I didn't answer. I buckled my seatbelt, pulled out of the vineyard parking lot, and drove toward the highway. The call I did take came 45 minutes later when I was already halfway back to Oakville, an unknown number. I almost let it go, but something made me pick up. It was Krista's father-in-law, the groom's father. His name was Mr. O.C. He introduced himself formally, which struck me, and then he said, I want you to know that I am aware of what my son and his fiancée did today. It was wrong. My grandchildren, if this marriage ever produces any, will not be raised with that kind of behavior as a model. I didn't know what to say. He kept going. I've told my son that I'm withdrawing our family's contribution to the event and to any future financial support until he understands what he did to you today. I wanted you to know that from me directly. I said, thank you. I appreciate that. He said, you did the right thing. For your children. We hung up. I sat with that for a long time. Devin came to my house that night. I'd expected that. I'd also, on the drive home, called a locksmith to change the code on the front door's keypad. Not because Devin had a key, but because Krista had been in my house enough times that I no longer felt comfortable with the existing code. I left the old code active long enough to let the locksmith in, then had it changed to something none of them knew. When Devin knocked, I didn't open the door. He knocked again. He called my name. He said he was sorry. He said Krista was upset. He said the venue had sent everyone home and the guests were furious and the caterer was threatening to invoice for the full service regardless of cancellation. I said, through the door, the caterer will invoice me, not you. I'll handle it. He said, can we just talk? I said, not tonight. Get your things together. We'll talk when I'm ready. He stood on the porch for a while. I watched through the front window, standing back enough that he couldn't see me, with Rowan on my hip and Penny sitting on the stairs behind me with her arms crossed, already knowing more than a child her age should have to know. Eventually, he left. The caterer did invoice me. It was $11,000 for the services rendered in preparation, the food that had been made, the staff that had been on site. I paid it. I added it to the debt ledger I'd already drafted. Total, $60,000 in the original transfer plus $11,000 in ancillary costs. Minus $38,000 in venue refund. Net loss, $33,000. I emailed the number to Devin with no additional message. Just the figure, with a line beneath it, as per our signed agreement, repayment begins in January. He didn't respond for 9 days. When he did, the email was 3 paragraphs long and the word but appeared 7 times. My mother called me almost daily for the first 2 weeks. She was upset, not with Devin, not with Krista, but with the situation in the abstract. The way some people can't locate who to be angry at, so they become angry at the temperature of the room. She said things like, families need to find a way through, and you know Devin doesn't think before he acts. And once, memorably, Krista comes from a different background, she doesn't understand how we do things. I let her talk. I'd learned a long time ago that my mother's monologues were not conversations, they were performances that required an audience, not a participant. What I didn't do was apologize. A few weeks after the wedding, that wasn't. Penny came home from school and asked me something I wasn't ready for. She said, "Mom, why did Uncle Devin let someone put our pictures on a list like that?" I put down what I was doing. I sat with her at the kitchen table. I said, "Sometimes people who love us make choices that hurt us and they don't always know how to fix it." She thought about this. She said, "Does Uncle Devin love us?" I said, "I believe he does, but loving someone and protecting them are different things and you deserve both." She nodded slowly. In that way, she has that makes her seem older than she is. Rowan came in from the backyard right then, covered in mud up to his ankles, holding a stick he'd decided was a sword. He announced that he'd defeated 3 dragons. I told him I'd never been more proud of anything in my life. Devin and Krista did eventually get married, a courthouse ceremony in November, with 2 witnesses and a dinner afterward at a restaurant in downtown Toronto. He texted me a photo afterward. Just the photo, no message. I texted back a heart, because he's still my brother, even though things are different now. The difference is that I know, with a clarity I didn't have before, what kind of relationship we actually have. It's not the one I thought we had. It's not a relationship where I am someone he protects. It's a relationship where I'm someone he leans on, and there is a meaningful distance between those 2 things. Penny's respart is fully funded now. Rowan starts school next September, and I've already paid for his first 2 years of activities through the community center. We went to Newfoundland in the summer, just the 3 of us, and hiked to a lighthouse and ate fish and chips from a truck by the harbor and watched Rowan try to befriend a puffin for 45 minutes. He almost succeeded. Almost, Miss. Fournier reviewed my finances again in October and said I was on track. She said the money I'd lost was significant but not catastrophic, and that the choices I'd made since my husband died had been largely sound. She said, "You made one expensive decision out of love. That doesn't undo everything else you've built." I thought about that for a long time. Devin has been making his monthly payments. Small, but consistent. He never mentions the wedding when we talk. We've found a kind of functional distance. Birthday calls, the occasional lunch, a text chain about our mother. It's not what I wanted for us, but it's what's honest. Krista does not reach out. I don't expect her to. What I have instead is this: 2 kids who know that their mother doesn't leave when things get hard. 2 kids who watched me stand in a gravel parking lot and choose them, quietly and without drama, when it mattered. Penny told me recently out of nowhere that she wanted to be a lawyer when she grew up. I asked her why. She said, "Because you had a contract and it worked." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I did both, a little. I told her that contracts only work when you're brave enough to enforce them, and that bravery was the part that took practice. She said, "We can practice." I said, "We already are."